This is David Menzies, and as part of our assignment for EDL 601 about transformational leaders, I chose Sir Winston Churchill. Churchill served the British government in several different capacities, but he is remembered most for his role as Prime Minister from 1940 to 1946. He is one of the unique group of individuals that surfaced during the tumultuous times of World War II. Northouse outlines 4 characteristics of transformational leadership, which he calls factors. These include idealized influence, inspirational motivation, intellectual stimulation, and idealized consideration. Smith, Montagno, and Kosmeka 2004 used the same 4 characteristics derived from the work by Bass and Avolio. Idealized influence is best described as one's ability to be a good role model. Churchill was honest, if not to a fault. He states in regard to the truth is incontrovertible. Malice may attack it, ignorance may deride it, but in the end, there it is. His honesty established a trust with the British people, and so when asked about his plan of how to deal with Hitler and the expanding Third Reich, Churchill said, "You ask, what is our aim? I can answer in one word: victory. Victory at all costs. Victory in spite of all terror. Victory, however long and hard the road may be. For without victory, there is no survival." One must understand the circumstances at the time of this statement. The Western world was watching Germany simultaneously conquer parts of Europe, and they were about to begin their assault on France, which would fall in approximately 1 month after Churchill's speech. Things looked pretty bleak. This speech was not only visionary but also motivational, which blends into the inspirational motivational factor. Churchill was able to inspire patriotism and hope in a seemingly hopeless situation. Smith et al. States that transformational leadership is the model for organizations facing intense external pressure where revolutionary change is a necessity, and they use the same term for survival. Churchill was quickly about to be placed face to face with the survival of his country. The stakes were never higher. The fear was enormous as France fell to the Germans in June 1940. Britain was the only bastion of democracy in Western Europe left. According to History.com, Churchill's strong conviction about the need for democracy helped underpin many of his decisions, and he recognized Hitler's challenge to the form of government and was poised to combat it. Churchill was intellectually stimulating, which is factor 3 of transformational leadership. In fact, that is partly why he was elected prime minister. For years, Churchill had warned of the rise of Hitler and the Nazis, but Neville Chamberlain, the prime minister at the time, along with members of parliament, did not wish to get into another world war. So their strategy was one of trying to placate Hitler by letting him annex certain parts of different countries and then entire countries, thinking these actions would appease him. That strategy wasn't working, and Churchill's willingness to abandon this useless policy and confront Hitler head-on was the type of leadership Parliament felt was necessary. The final factor of transformational leadership, individualized consideration, was shown through Churchill's confidence in his armed forces. He was the former Lord of the Admiralty and realized the potential of the Air Force to help defend the British Isles. The resolve of the Royal Air Force and Churchill's commitment to the people of Great Britain appears in this following famous quote that happened just at the beginning of the Battle of Britain. "We shall fight in the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight in the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender." Besides the charismatic nature of this speech, the rather simple yet straightforward language of Churchill is also apparent. Historical accounts claim that this simple language, along with slight speech impediment, were part of his appeal to the common people of Britain. He appeared to be one of them. Not perfect, not better. Upon the precarious victory of the Battle of Britain, Churchill displayed his ability to recognize the achievement of followers of his leadership. His famous quote to the pilots of the Royal Air Force is, "Never was so much owed by so many to so few," which is an additional example of individualized consideration. Churchill was not a transactional leader as described in North House. There was no contingent reward or expectation to meet a certain quota. The stakes were much higher. It was about survival. Survival of the British people, their form of government, and in Churchill's mind, survival of Western civilization. Churchill was a visionary, honest and not afraid to speak out against injustice. In 1946, upon considering the actions and aggression of the Soviet Union, stated that, quote, an anti-democratic iron curtain, a growing challenge and peril to Christian civilization, had descended across Europe, unquote. This vision was the onset of the Cold War. I thought it rather ironic that Sir Winston Churchill was brought in to save Britain and then so unceremoniously pushed out of the Prime Minister position right after World War II ended. It wasn't until I read Smith et al. 2004 that it made some sense. On page 89, they spoke of how transformational leadership is beneficial during a growth phase, or in this case, crisis phase, of an organization, but can be replaced during a maturity stage, or as I see it, calmer times, by another form of leadership. Churchill's transformational leadership was needed to help Britain survive the most harrowing time of its history. In the words of Tom Brokaw, Churchill was one of the greatest men, not just of our time, but of all time. Thank you.